All right. So Pashas Vayetze, that's where we are, right? So we should do Yaakov, but the Ilm wants the balcony Mahalach first. So we'll do a 5-minute version of it, so it doesn't distract from the whole shit. What's the balcony Torah? So I'll just say, like when you're doing kiruv out of town, I don't know if it's still like that. That's the truth. I haven't been a rabbi out of town in 20 years, but when I was, like every tekufa there's a mitzvah in the Torah that makes it, that's the obstacle to Friar people, taking us seriously. Amol was Shabbos. People had to. My grandfather came out of the camps. There was no such thing as not working on Shabbos. He didn't work on Shabbos, but he got fired every Sunday. It wasn't the Mahalach. When I was a rabbi, the mitzvah was all the men-women mitzvahs. Nobody. I knew who was Jewish by who crossed the street when they passed the shul. The guy would walk on the side of the shul. The Yidden would cross the street. They didn't want to chas v'shalom get zapped. But when you finally trap them somewhere and you talk to them and you get a conversation, so you say, like, why have I never met you yet? So the answer is always something to do with mechitza. Women don't count for a minyan. Women rabbis. The truth is, women don't count for a minyan. Most of them don't even know what a minyan is. But you have a mechitza. You're the Orthodox. To the point that I used to tell you that the mechitza is more than it divides men from women, it divides Fry Yidden from Yiddishkeit. It's like the barrier. It's a real barrier. Because the whole world's so feminist. That's why all the men-women Torah was like the center of all my Torah in the beginning. I don't do it anymore because everyone's so past feminism. But in those days, that was, like, went to college, that was every single shir. That's all they wanted to talk about was feminism. And in Shul, definitely, that was the obstacle. So when I started the Shul, I thought like I was being very progressive. That I had the mechitza right down the middle of the shul, like 50-50. It's like each side's like I would give the drasha like the mechitza, like one nostril and one eye, each side. That was the shir. So because that's what they would say. The women in the balcony, why the women upstairs? It's like that's the ultimate second-class citizen that you relegate the women to upstairs. So I wanted to explain what I discovered I wish I would have known it then. I only discovered this many years after I left. And I'm embarrassed. Every time you mess with the Messiah or something, I guess it wasn't messing, start making machitz in the middle. There's no problem with having front and back and side by side. But every time you get insecure and you do something differently, you end up having charata. Because like Chazal, they knew what they were doing. Everything Chazal says, a lot of people are embarrassed by Chazal. So a lot of Chazals that are not low-hanging fruit, they're embarrassing. But instead of like apologizing for them, when you finally be patient, when you finally work it out, they're mind blowing and they're much more beautiful the way they were. So that the second you start twisting chazals to make them more politically correct, you end up having charata when you figure them out, because they mean what they say, and it's always amazing. I was like a lot of my Torah is like that, is redoing chazals, like to show you how without apologizing to them, they're crazy cool. But the mechitza is a good example. So I'll tell you where it starts from. With the Gemara in Hachol, right? The last parak of Sukkah. What does the Gemara in Hachol say? That's where a balcony comes from. It says that Chol Moed Sukkos, the first Mishnah in Hachol, as soon as Yom Tov was over, Havdalah, the first days, the worker men would go right into the Azara, the Beis HaMikdash, and they would build something called a Tikkun Gadol. They would build this Tikkun Gadol. That's what they would do every year, Matzi Yom Tov. Why? Because the whole Chol HaMoed was Simchas Beis HaSheva, was this crazy like carnival matzav. And in order to have the carnival matzav, they needed a Tikkun Gadol. What was this Tikkun Gadol? It was a balcony. They built a balcony in the Azara, because the Gemara says originally they tried having the men inside and the women outside the Azara. It didn't work. Then they tried to put the women inside and the men outside. It didn't work. And then they built the balcony, and it was amazing. So that's where the balcony comes from, the makar of a balcony. So what is, first of all, it's a very subtle question, but these kind of questions usually give way to big insights. Like, what's the lashon tikkun gadol? It's a very problematic lashon, tikkun gadol. Something's either broken or fixed. It's kind of binary, right? If a tikkun gadol means what? That there's a tikkun and tikkun gadol. Like, that means it's either fixed or not, or broken, right? What does a tikkun gadol mean? Very fixed. So that means that what? Before it was very fixed, it was getting blank looks. You're not asking to the Shiloh?
No, I understand the question, but there's different levels of how well you can solve a problem. I'll prove to you the problem wasn't never 100% solved. They still did Bahab. There still existed Bahab. Even after making the balconies, they're still doing Bahab. So you can never solve a problem 100%. The question is, did you solve it 50%? Did you solve it 90%? If you solved it 90%, when you used to have it 50%, that's a
So you're saying you're willing to use the word masukon for something that's not really fixed. You're just doubling down on the question.
Or could I better rephrase it better?
I have no problem with saying there's degrees, but then don't call it fixed.
No, it's fixed 150% because we knew what you were going to say in 10 minutes.
So we'll see. Okay, so there's a teretz.
Why is it not? Why is it not?
So let me tell you where it comes from. You mask into the kasha, sort of. What if your case is a good case? So that means it was not fixed.
Because if
you're calling tikkun gadol is what the rest of the world, definitely in Torah and Chazal, we wouldn't want to hear that tikkun is not fixed. So what you're calling tikkun gadol really should be called mesukon, and the other ones should be called almost fixed. But why is it mesukon and tikkun gadol? It's not tikkun gadol. The other one wasn't really fixed. It was band-aids, right? You're making 2 degrees, but the 2 degrees aren't on the fixed side. It's on the broken side.
But it's not a problem you could ever fix 100%.
Well, let's see. Maybe you're ready to limiting.
I'm assuming that
Don't make assumptions.
It's not a problem you could ever
So
fix 100%.
here's where I realize it from. There's a book you can read. This book if you're interested in interesting things called "Life in the Rural Communities: Jewish Life in the Rural Communities of Southern Germany." A very long title. It's one of those little pamphlets that the Scranton Yeshiva always gives out. Those little pamphlets. No one knows what I'm talking about. You know what Scranton Yeshiva is? Okay. Whatever. They fundraiser, they give out these little pamphlets. So this is one year they gave this out. It's written by Hugo Mandelbaum. He's the father of Uri Mandelbaum Zatzal, who is the Menahel in Philly Yeshiva. You know all those Mandelbaums. The Mandelbaum from Orchas Chaim is a grandson, and the Mandelbaums. So he writes like this. It's a history of growing up in the rural communities of southern Germany. And he writes like this. He writes that when I was a bacher and I first came back from yeshiva, Bein Hazmanim, I went off to yeshiva and I came back. He goes, I remember walking into Shul for Yom Tov and being very careful how I daven because all the girls were in the balcony. And he writes this in the book. And I remember reading it it's cringe. You lived to be 85 years old. And now you find you made it. You're by the finish line. Why do you have to embarrass yourself by 85? I guess when you're 85 you can say whatever you want, but it's a really weird thing for some important person, to be made to. And I was wondering what was he thinking that he would say that? And I realized the reason why it not bothered me so much, but it struck home so much is because I grew up the exact same way. I grew up in Washington Heights. And we have a shul there, the Eki shul, Breuer's. Breuer's it's a huge shul, big balcony. And I remember when I first came back from Long Beach, I went away from my first off Shabbos, and came back whenever it was high school. You come back Matzah Yom Kippur. So the first Shabbos in between Yom Kippur and Sukkot, right after you come back, you spend 20 minutes outside the shul fixing your hat perfectly and your tzitzis and then practicing the coolest shakel. Why? Because the girls are in the balcony. And I figured if he did it, and I did it, and Mustama were not the only ones, So what's the vart? And I thought about it. I said, why is this, my whole premise, why is this embarrassing? What's embarrassing about this? It's just very real. Bottom line is to a 15-year-old boy, what does a 15-year-old boy know about the Rebbeinu Shalom? Unless he suffered and went through some kind of trauma. What does a 15-year-old boy know about God? God is, and Baruch Hashem, most 15-year-old boys haven't gone through any trauma yet. So what do you expect from him to do? He has no relationship with the Rebbeinu Shalom. The Rebbeinu Shalom is a theory. You know what represents Ruchnius to a 15-year-old boy? What represents holiness, Ruchnius? That's what Abbas Yisrael represents. the girls represent everything holy and pure and good. And when you want to daven because there are girls in the balcony, that's not prust. That just means that you want to be deserving of that girl in the balcony. She represents. She is the representation of Ruchnius, of everything pure and holy and good. The whole entire it's not just Jews. The whole entire universal dream that we always refer to of the Prince Charm, of the hero slaying a dragon for the princess. Why is that the universal image? Because that's what the princess. What does the princess represent? She's just all of goodness. She's beautiful and kind and good and deep and sensitive. And every princess, you read it, they're all the same midas. They just change. They just have different names. But every summer when Disney cranks out a new princess, it's always the same. And Prince Charming's the same. He's some guy who's inspired by her royalty and her dignity and the fact that she's so regal. And that's the model. So when the boy wants a daven, and says girls in the balcony, that is the holiest thing in the world. It's just it's his way of being deserving of the Rebbeinu Shalom. And this is what it means that the balcony is a tikkun gadol. The best system in the world is not a system where the men don't see the women don't see the men. The best system in the world is a system where the men don't see the women, but they know that the women see them. That's tikkun gadol. It's better than it was broken. You didn't just solve it. You had a problem with taruvis, a problem. So you put a balcony up, you solved the problem. You did solve the problem. But you put the balcony up, now the men can't see the women, but they know the women see them. And that's inspiring. And then everyone davens. One of the biggest calamities, I think, that's wrong with the world today is that we daven in shtiblach. And you know what the thing wrong with shtiblach is? Is that there's no balconies. That's what was lost. If I was a billionaire, this would be my tzedakah. I would go around to all the shuls putting balconies back in. And you will literally solve all of Klal Yisrael's problems.
To come to davening during the week?
Not during the week, Shabbos.
So Shabbos to davening?
Okay, listen, I'm not solving I'm not going to solve every problem. But here's what happens on Shabbos. Here's what happens, or Yom Tov. What happens is, everyone davens. So who davens, you daven the shul balcony on Shabbos?
Depends where I am, but I like to go to a shul, not to...
No, the old men go there, not the bachram,
No,
When they daven in the room downstairs with a faster minion, even if you're in the balcony shul.
Go to Heimish
Where the
shul,
Kiddush
and daven in the regular minion.
I don't know. Tell me where. Which shul? Which
Tell me
shul?
what neighborhood you're in.
What?
Tell me what neighborhood you're going.
Whatever. So most
Fine,
shuls
but
today
shuls-
don't have
Most shuls don't even have balconies, and even if there are
balconies,
balconies, the bachram aren't in that room, right? But the point is like this: is you put balconies back in. So first of all, if the girls are, no, the boys aren't missing davening. They're all going to shul if the girls are in the balcony. That's
Not if
number
it's a
one.
one-way mirror.
What?
Not if it's a one-way mirror.
Even if it's a one-way mirror. If it's a one-way mirror. I remember, I shouldn't say this on tape, but I remember,
I'm not gonna edit it.
No, it's all right. I sat, I'm being real. I sat in Broyers, it's like a horseshoe. So I sat on the left side under the balcony. So I was only in view of the left side and the back, but the right side and the back. The guys who sat in the middle, they was the lucky guys, because then every side, they had a lot of, they had more of an audience, It's, and I'm sure every guy thought this, But you can't tell your father, can we get a seat in the middle of the shul? You can't do that. But if you put balconies back in the shul, no bacher, every boy would be in shul. But more important than all the boys being in shul, you know what would really happen? All the girls would go home from shul knowing just how powerful they are, feeling their power. The fact that we don't have this, what does a girl have to do today to feel powerful? We don't have real, Rabbi, we don't have real opportunities for a girl to feel powerful in the kosher way. That power is part of life. That is what affirms. It's very hard to be holy. The mashal I always use for men and women, to want to understand the relationship of a husband, at least philosophically, is the same as the relationship of a rav and a congregation. The rav and the kehillah. So, the rav, what's the rav's job? He would love to chill with the boys. The rav would love to go to leave during the speech and go to the Kiddush club. Matzah Shabbos, everyone's hanging out. But the Ilm invites him for levayas, But no invite. But the Rav's job is to be a little higher. So, but how do you do that if everyone else is having a party? So there's a relationship between the Rav and the Kehillah where the Rav has to live there, but the people therefore have to help the Rav stay there, and you have to mechabed the Rav. When you mechabed the Rav, you're helping him deal with all the things that he's missing out on, you know? And he deserves the covet because he's not cheapening himself. He's not doing all these things. But that relationship with the Rav has to keep himself, his nose clean, and has to keep himself a little bit aloof. That's really what the woman goes through. She has to remain Torah. She can't be crass. She can't, when the husband makes a funny dimples joke, you know, then she can't even laugh. She has to go, stop it, Yankee, you know, like that, you know, like, but Lamaisa, you know, but she can't laugh, right? She's not allowed to laugh because then she loses her dignity if she laughs. So how do you help her? Who wouldn't want to let their hair down? So you have to mechabed her. You mechabed someone is you're keeping them cognizant of the benefits of where they are, you know. And the rest of us can show, but we're not entitled to that cover. That's the trade-off. And that's on a mechitzos. But if you had a balcony in every shul, so the girls would walk home feeling powerful, and that the power feeds their dignity and keeps them holier, and then they become more inspiring, and then more guys go to shul. It's a beautiful galgal that just lights up the whole world, and that's tikkun gadol. That's tikkun gadol means. The idea to make a balcony in the middle, it's 50-50, is such an American corruption of this Havana. Yeah? That's how you heard it last time. That was the same side. Did I miss anything important?
I heard it from Stan Greskin.
Oh, you heard it from Greskin?
He didn't miss anything.
I didn't miss anything. I hear. You ask him, it's a good tzarchei tziva to fit this. What? Oh, it's right. So
let's start with take the
this is
down.
This is why the real Rosh Yeshiva know this. This is how you know the difference between a Rosh Yeshiva who's a machanach and a guy who just has a job. The guy who's a machanach knows that you want Bachram to dance, you want Bachram to be levidik, you have to have girls. But Purim, Chanukah, whenever there's a Masiba, the first thing you need on the Masiba is Ezras Noshim. If there's no Ezras Noshim, it's just
hold on.
man.
So why don't we have mixed high
Let me tell you
schools?
something. If there's no Ezras Noshim, dancing is literally like Tisha B'Av. You're literally only dancing.
Wedding.
You're only dancing.
Close enough.
Talking about there's always plenty of girls by the mechitza, and then there's the video. You know, they're watching the video. Everybody's whatever. You know, when the camera comes around, that's when you get
Why don't we have
kashmak.
mixed
Right?
schools?
Right?
We
Everyone knows.
should have mixed schools. You know how good everyone would
We're
learn.
dancing. We're not dancing.
Every guy would have a kasha on the Gemara if there were girls sitting in class.
No. So that's what I said. You missed half the word. What was the first you said?
Good machanach, yes.
What was no? The first side was the system where the men can't see the women in order the women see them.
Why? He's asking
We'll have a mechitza in class.
Because that cheap when the men see them, it gets
We'll
cheap.
have a mechitza in class.
What?
First of all, yeah.
Why can't every class have a
Why isn't every class should have a
yeshiva was-
balcony?
I was in Long Beach. They knew
Who's gonna go to these
three times a
Every
year.
class should have a balcony.
Three
A
times a
one-way
year in
glass
Long
halfway
Beach there was
down the-
Ezras
halfway down
Noshim.
the class.
Shavuos when there was dancing. Anytime they wanted to go to dance. Purim, Simchas Torah, Chanukah, whenever there's a masiba, and you want the guys to be geschmack.
It's end game for you.
What?
It's end game. You can put a mechitza in the classroom, and you know it.